Olive. Hey, sweetie, come here. Oh my God. Why are you all wet? What's wrong with you? Oh my God. Where have you been? Hi, everyone. Welcome to Growing with Sarah. I'm Sarah, and I'm so happy to have you here today. Today, we're going to be talking about the vegetables that I'm growing for 2024. Got a whole stack of seeds here to share. And we're also going to discuss the different types of containers that you can grow vegetables in. So if that sounds like something you're interested in learning about, then grab your tea or your coffee and let's get started. Okay, first vegetable that I have here is green beans. These are the Kalima green beans, and I grew these last summer. I really enjoyed them. I love green beans because you can just go out and grab a quick handful or two for dinner, or eat them fresh while you're working in the garden, or pickle them and have them for midwinter. When you pickle or preserve, it's so wonderful because you kind of get to relive your garden through the winter where you're not having any fresh vegetables. And beans are really fantastic for that. Super versatile, plus they're easy to grow. Another thing that makes green beans a really easy and wonderful vegetable to grow is that it can be grown in all kinds of different types of containers. When you look at a description of the bean that you're interested in, you want to look for the words either bush habit or pole habit. Bush bean means exactly what you would think it means. So the plant is going to grow to a certain height and a certain width, and the beans are going to grow all within that. A pole bean or a vining bean is one that will continue to grow in length as the season goes on. Pole beans are ones that you want to have on a trellis. So this is really nice because they can be decorative at the same time as being edible, and which makes them, doubly useful to grow. I grew green beans on the trellis near the driveway this year, and I also grew the Kalima in the green stalks. You can put a ton of beans in a container and get a really nice harvest over the grow season. It's really nice to grow beans in containers because they can be sown multiple times a year. So you're not putting, something in your garden bed that takes up a bunch of space, and then you have to pull it out, and then you have a bunch of dead space until it grows back again. You can have your container, put your beans in, grow them till they're done, take them out, start again, and just put that container aside if you're not happy with the way it looks aesthetically. You can cover a beautiful archway or trellis in tons of green beans and all the little flowers and tendrils and climbing, and then beans hanging, depending on what kind of beans you're growing. There's some really beautiful varieties out there like dragon tongue, and the purple potted green beans that are going to give you a real visual experience as well as being delicious. You can also grow green beans in pretty much any type of container. They don't require a lot of space for their roots at all. As long as you start with a good soil base in your containers and you do a regular feeding, so once a week or every 2 weeks, depending on what type of fertilizer you're using, you should have no issues growing green beans and getting a really nice harvest off of them in containers. They're very nice, easy plant to grow. They don't complain about where you put them. Okay, next is a seed that I got for free from Baker Creek this year. It is the Chinese broccoli or yod fa. Broccoli and brassica type varieties do get bigger. They have a lot of leaves, and so when you're growing in a container, you just want to make sure that the container is big enough to handle the full like upper size of the plant, not so much the roots. Most of the Vegetables that you're going to be growing in your summer garden have very shallow roots. That's why you can grow vegetables so well in containers because they don't need a whole lot of room for their roots. They do need good nourishment, of course, and they do need the correct watering, but they don't need a whole lot of space. So when you're thinking about brassicas, though, in containers, you want to make sure that you have enough space and a sturdy enough pot for your plant on as it grows on top. This yodfa is really easy to grow. I've grown it in the past. I'm going to grow it in my green stalks this spring. And depending on how well it goes over with the family, I may grow it again in the fall. It's only 55 days to maturity, and it's broccoli, but you cut it's like stalks of broccoli, not a big head of broccoli. So you can come in and cut off of it, similar to how you would with a kale, where you can just come in and take what you want off of it, and the plant keeps growing, which is a reason why I really enjoy this type of broccoli. Next up is cabbage. So I have this Chinese cabbage, Golden Beauty. I grew this last year, and unfortunately, so it's a 55-day, so it's really fast, and it's said to be really good for kimchi. And I do really enjoy fermenting vegetables. So I was interested in trying this out, and I put it out, but I put it out a little too late, and some early heat came, and it bolted very fast. So this year I'm going to try again, and I understand that it can take quite a bit of cold now and not much heat. So I'm going to grow this in the green stalks this spring with the yodfa. Then I'll be making fermented cabbage out of it. You could also grow this definitely in the ground. You could grow it, I would say, probably in any type of grow bag. You wouldn't have an issue growing this. The look of the plant is really pretty, so I really enjoyed it in the green stalks. They're not super dense cabbage heads or anything like that, but they do get tall. So if you're going to be putting it someplace where it's going to be exposed to wind and things like that, you want to make sure that the base, your container, is heavy enough so that the wind catching in this upright plant, this very tall upright plant, isn't just going to knock them over and dump all your soil out and be a thorn in your side until it's ready to be picked. Next veggies that I have on deck is carrots. I didn't grow carrots this year, and I really regretted it. Carrots are a fantastic vegetable for fresh eating, but you can also preserve them. They preserve really well. You can, chop them up and freeze them. They work great for that if you're someone who makes a lot of soups, which I am. I make a lot of stock throughout the whole year, and I use a ton of carrots for that. It's great to have those frozen carrots. You can just throw them right into the pot. I make up little Ziploc baggies in the amount of 4 to 5 carrots. So, and I just mark that as stock veggies. And I'll just take that bag and dump it into my pot. I don't have to do all the chopping and everything like that. And I don't have to run to the grocery store if I'm missing one item. Also, you can, of course, pickle carrots. You can just can them up plain. You can freeze dry carrots. They're really a versatile plant. And you can just have carrots for a long time in your refrigerator. They are a root vegetable if you have all the right conditions for a root cellar. You can keep them that way. And this year I'm just going to be growing the corral carrots. I got 3 packs of these for free, so no reason to buy anything else. And I'm going to be growing these in my grow beds. So carrots, you definitely can grow carrots in containers. You just want to make sure that you're putting them in a fluffy, that doesn't have to be super light, because growing against the soil is part of what makes a nice carrot. It's part of the stress that makes a good carrot. But you also don't want to have, I have clay soil. I wouldn't grow carrots in the ground here. They would be deformed and weird. I mean, they're still edible, but they're not great for peeling and chopping and things like that. So if you're gonna grow carrots in containers, you wanna pay attention to the actual size of the carrot, how big they get. There's plenty of carrots out there that grow just really short. That would be wonderful for containers. But if you're looking for like a big full size, foot long or even longer type carrot, you're not going to want to grow these in a container of any kind. I will be growing these in my grow beds. My grow beds have a mixture of compost and black dirt and potting soil in them. So the soil is loose enough to grow carrots. They do have contact with my native soil, but these I won't get that long. Next is celery. Celery is a fantastic plant that you can grow again anywhere. They don't have very deep roots, and the only thing that I would caution against growing in containers, like I said with other things, is that these do get very tall. So you want to go with something that's as wide on the bottom as it is on the top. Don't go for that vase type shape of a regular sort of flower pot. This celery I've been growing for a few years. I actually grew this in the green stock last year, and it was nice because it didn't get to full size, and I actually seeded it fairly heavy in there because it wasn't sort of meant to get to full size. I grew it more like you would for like a baby lettuce type mix or something along those lines, where it was seeded very heavy because I wanted to have something I could cut off of through the whole season, and something that was easy to add just a little bit of celery flavor to whatever I was cooking at the time. So one of the things about growing celery to full size is that then you have a ton of full size celery. So what are you going to do with it, right? I think celery is probably one of the things that goes bad the most in my refrigerator because I need 3 stalks of it, but I have to buy a whole head of it. I have frozen celery in the past. Definitely, you can freeze the leaves of celery easy, and there's no problem with that. That's something that I'll throw into my soup stock Ziploc baggies, and then it just gets dumped into the soup. But you can also dry the leaves. You can freeze celery, but celery is mostly water, so it's not something that you can take out like a carrot out of the freezer and cook and still have a crispy carrot. When you take the celery out, similar more like to an onion, and you cook it, it's going to get very soft. It's just so much water in there. So, just so you know that. But if you are, again, someone who uses celery for soup stocks or soups in general, or you're okay with that softer texture, then freezing celery is a really great way to preserve it. Next is lettuce. So I have a bunch of lettuce seeds that will probably get spread around the garden throughout the year and in the green stalks and in other growing containers. And lettuce is something, if you seed it very thick, and you can get a lot of little, baby leaves, which is fantastic. And then you can cut off of those. They give you not only that you can go out and kind of cut little baby leaves as you want them in your salads or on your sandwiches or just as decorative items on your plate if you're doing a little fancy thing. It's a great way to grow, and you can also put it in your containers or in your grow beds or in the ground around your other plants because it doesn't take a whole lot of nutrients away from the other plants. It's not super competitive, and it gives ground cover. So it gives you better moisture control in your containers and things like that because the soil is covered. So I have tons of those. I have tons of different types of lettuce that I will just throw in a little Ziploc baggie, mix them all up, and then sprinkle them around wherever I feel like I want to have something extra growing, either for that ground cover or for the ease of being able to go out and snip some lettuce whenever I need it. But I also enjoy growing full heads of lettuce. That requires much more space. it can be hard to give that kind of space up in your garden for a head of lettuce that takes, 50, 60 days to come to fruition. And then you have this head of lettuce that you have to eat fairly quickly. So I got this seed for free again from Baker Creek this year, and it's called tennis ball. And so these get, let me see. The original black-seeded strain documented to have been grown at Monticello by Thomas Jefferson. Very interesting history there. And so it's a rather loose butterhead type that are petite, just 6 to 8 inches in diameter. So I thought these would be fantastic to grow in the grow beds or even in the ground. One, because they'll be freaking adorable out there, little rows of tiny heads of lettuce is just in my mind, it's just so cute. But also because you can let them grow to fruition, to full size. And if you're just one person making a lettuce, making a salad, you may only need one or two of these, and you're not overwhelmed with this giant head of lettuce. In the past, I've grown like round head lettuce and romaine type lettuces, and they're fantastic and delicious from the garden. Totally worth growing lettuce in your garden for the flavor. But they take up so much space, and then you have this huge thing of lettuce. So you better be feeding at least 3 people. And then if you're growing, 4 or 5 heads of lettuce, then those all come to maturity at the same time. Then you have to be feeding, 3 to 4 people a day, every single day, and they better like lettuce. Is all I have to say, right? So, so I'm always kind of looking for that happy medium. And like I said, the baby lettuce is fantastic, but you don't get that experience of a full head of lettuce. So I thought I'm going to try this and see how this works out for more of a single person eating it, or maybe even just two, because Lily does really enjoy a salad as well. Right. Next is onions. So this is another thing that I regret not growing this past year. And actually, I did try to start onions, and I had absolutely horrible luck. Everything failed. I don't know what I did wrong. I've started onions in the past successfully and grown them to full size onions and had them in the, put away for the winter and everything. I don't know what I did. And I tried several times. I think tried 3 times to start onions. Luckily, when you start onions, you start them really early. And so when the first 2 times failed, I was desperate on that 3rd time, but I still had time to grow them. And then the 3rd time failed, and I had to go out to the greenhouses, and none of the greenhouses had any onions. All I could find was leeks. So try again. And I will be. This year, I'm going to do the onion, this Brunswick onion, these sweet Spanish onions, this yellow of Parma, Zebrun shallot, which I have grown in the past and are very, very yummy. Now, onions, you can definitely grow onions in containers. I don't necessarily recommend it, since if you're growing green onions, totally grow them in containers. But if you're growing a bulbing onion, you probably don't want to grow them in containers because you can't grow very many. You have to make sure that you give them enough space to grow that bulb underground. Okay, so if this is this yellow sweet Spanish onion gets, they can grow really large roots up to a pound. So if you're looking at something that's, maybe 6 inches in diameter underground, you want to make sure that you're spacing your plants apart that far. When you're doing that in a container, you're not going to be able to fit as many in there as you want to. Now, there are definitely big, like long type grow bags that you can buy that are similar to a raised bed, and you could do onions in something like that. But if you're thinking about growing in a pot or just like a 5-gallon grow bag or something along those lines, you're just not going to get as many onions as you could if you just stick them in the ground or a raised bed. I'm gonna be growing tomatoes in the ground this year, and I think that I'll be growing onions at the base of it. Next is peppers. So, peppers are something that grow really fantastic in containers. I've had really fantastic outcomes with growing peppers in containers. I've grown them in 5 or 10 gallon grow bags. I've grown them in my raised beds. Last year I grew them in my green stock, which to no fault of the container was a major fail. We just didn't have enough hot weather. That's one of the reasons why growing peppers in containers is so fantastic because you can have it someplace where it's very warm. You can have it in a greenhouse, even a little pop-up greenhouses, which is what I'm going to be doing with my peppers this year because it was such a sad failure last year. This is a bush variety, bush bell hybrid from Burpee, and they are small, 2.5-inch wide fruits that grow on 3-foot tall plants. Peppers can just continue growing. And so if you buy something that doesn't say it's specifically made for container or has some sort of definitive growth height and width, then you can be sure that the pepper will just continue to get bigger and bigger. But for the most part, we all have, enough growing season to get the peppers done before they start to get too big and unruly. Also, that depends on what type of peppers you grow. I find that hot peppers are definitely can grow into much larger plants much faster than a sweet pepper would. I'm growing a bush variety, very specific growth pattern to that 36 inches tall, and they are ready to be harvested in 60 days at the green color or 80 days at red, which is perfect for me again, since my grow season is really only 120 days. Don't be afraid to grow peppers in containers. I think it's probably one of the very best ways to grow peppers. And they really enjoy being crowded in. So if you do grow them in your like raised beds or in the ground, don't be afraid to put them fairly close to each other. And again, so I'm growing the Bush Bell hybrid, which is made to be grown in containers, and I'm growing the Datil, which is a very hot pepper that's supposed to have a really great fruity flavor. And I don't eat hot peppers myself, but I am going to use them for pickling in my dilly beans and cucumber pickles. Is squash. This year I'm going to be growing these white miniature pumpkins. I'm going to be growing them for decoration, but they are also supposedly quite tasty to eat. I will also be growing summer squash. I will be growing the early prolific straight neck, which is a yellow summer squash, and the gray zucchini, which is your classic zucchini summer squash. Both are very good. I grew them in the garden last year. I have grown squash in grow bags and they did wonderfully. The year I was in the apartment, I grew several squash plants in grow bags in 5 gallon grow bags. They did really well. The only thing that I would say about growing squash in containers is that they are very heavy feeders. You want to make sure that you are giving them a really good nutrient dense base. So I would suggest going right straight into like a black dirt or a compost mix from the store, and then making sure that you're feeding them consistently at once a week. Once a week, you have to feed squash in order for them to produce male and female flowers, and then be able to grow the actual fruit. So yeah, you can definitely grow squash in containers. If you don't have a lot of space, you can still have summer squash in the summer. Just make sure that you are giving it enough nutrients. I also will be growing burpees, butterbush butternut, which is a small butternut squash that has a shorter growing season for my area. I really love butternut squash, but they take so long to kind of get off the ground and then actually create fruit and to have that fruit come to maturity where it will save well, that I just don't have a long enough growing season here. So um, the burpee butterbush butternut, I will be growing. I'll throw a picture of it up here for you. Next is tomatoes. Tomatoes, you absolutely can grow in containers. You can grow to, there's all kinds of containers out there that are made for tomatoes. You can get special pots, like self-watering pots that come with cages. You can grow tiny little dwarf type tomatoes in something like a green stock. You can even grow large tomatoes in a green stock if you have good support for them. And you can grow them in topsy-turvies, just regular pots, grow bags, raised beds in the ground. Tomatoes are another one of those plants that are super versatile. They don't have deep roots. As long as you have the support for them all above ground, above the dirt, you can grow them pretty much anywhere. Like, don't feel like you can't have tomatoes because you don't have space. I would say there are definitely a lot of very dwarf varieties out there. If you have very limited space and you can only grow in flower pot type situation, you can grow. I've grown the tiny Tim and the orange hat. Those are both dwarfed varieties. I've grown them in literally little terracotta pots on my porch, and they did fantastic. And the tomatoes are yummy. They're just like any other fresh eating tomato. It may not end up being your favorite variety, but it'll still be way better than anything you can get in the grocery store. And you can also grow full-size tomatoes in grow bags as well. I've grown in 5 and 10 gallon grow bags inside of a greenhouse, like a hoop house. I've grown in special things made just for tomatoes with the cages built in. The thing I would suggest you look for when you're growing tomatoes in containers is you have some that are made to grow to a certain size and some that will continue growing throughout the season. And how they mark that on the descriptions of the tomatoes is determinant and indeterminate. So a determinate tomato grows to a determined size, and an indeterminate tomato continues growing throughout the season until it dies. If you are going to be growing in something very small, like I said, like a little flower pot, you want to make sure that you're growing a dwarf variety that grows to a very determined size, so it's not going to outgrow its situation and create a problem for you. So the varieties of tomato that I'm growing this year are Black Beauty. This is one of my all-time favorite tomatoes. It's absolutely gorgeous. It does split a lot. It does split easily, and that's okay with me. I think they look even more beautiful after they split. They don't tend to rot because they split. They heal very quickly, but they do split easily with any type of fluctuation in the water, just so you know. But this is a very rich, delicious flavored tomato that I really enjoy growing. Then the blue cream berries. I have not grown these before. I've had the seeds for a couple of years now, but I haven't grown them before. From what I hear, these are really, really delicious. And I'm growing several different types of cherry tomatoes this year because last year I started Rosella cherries, which we'll talk about in a minute, that I started for Lily because they're her favorite type of tomato, and they all failed. And I thought that I had at least one plant that had survived, and I had mismarked it. So when the tomatoes started coming on, Lily was very disappointed, and I ended up going out and buying her like an $18 cherry tomato plant from the from the greenhouse, which was hard for me because I do not spend that kind of money on tomatoes. Tomatoes are very easy to start from seed. So that's one type of cherry tomato that I will be growing this year to avoid the wrath of Lily and also to avoid having to pay $20 for a tomato plant. The next variety that I'm growing is Bonnie Best. I got the seeds for free from Baker Creek this year, and I've never grown them, but they say that their medium-sized fruit is round, red, meaty, and flavorful, a good producer for fresh or canned. So perfect, because I do like to put a lot of tomatoes up. This is my all-time favorite type of tomato. It is the Cherokee Carbon. This is an indeterminate variety, and you can see actually that it says pole here, sort of like a bean would. These are a mix between the Cherokee Purple and the Carbon tomato, and they're my all-time favorite. The flavor is the perfect mix of the sort of tart tomato, true tomato flavor, and the richer more savory type flavor of a dark tomato. I absolutely love them. And Botanical Interest is the only place that I've ever found the seeds to grow them. I did pay, I think I think these were like maybe even $7 for 5 seeds. Oh, 10 seeds. Oh, okay, no, 6.29. Okay, close to 7 for 10 seeds, which is expensive for seeds, but still extremely cheap for tomato plants. And I've never found them anywhere around here. I only ever was able to find them grown at a greenhouse at a place that now I live, 2.5 hours away from, which honestly, I might make the drive, but luckily I found the seeds. So I grew these last year, and I got these into the ground late last year, and they still did really well. They're 75 to 80 days from transplanting. You're going to start having mature fruit on those. This is the honey drop cherry tomato. Supposedly, so this is from Fruition Seeds. Supposedly, these are very similar to sun gold tomatoes, except they have more color variation. I haven't grown these yet. I'm going to grow them this year, and we'll find out. We'll definitely give some feedback on that. The next variety is Rosella. This is my daughter Lillian's favorite cherry tomato. She absolutely loves eating fresh tomatoes out of the garden, and this is 100% her favorite, hands down. These have a really nice, rich, dark flavor. I enjoy them as well. And these are the ones that sadly she didn't get last year, and that I think she's still kind of holding it against me, honestly. And then the last tomato type is the San Marzano Lungo #2. These are, I always grow a paste tomato. Paste tomatoes are the most, I'll have the most plants of in my garden every year because they can well. So I can can up a bunch of whole tomatoes and have them for whatever I want throughout the rest of the season. And they still have that beautiful fresh flavor. So whenever you have that sort of nostalgia for the garden, you can go and eat some of that fresh food that you grew. Okay, the last couple of vegetables that I want to talk to you guys about is a cabbage and a kale. And these are plants that I'm actually growing specifically to have as decoration, so they will be grown in containers. I'm going to start them in probably little 4-inch pots. They will stay in those little 4-inch pots until they go into containers in the front yard for fall. Those are an ornamental cabbage. Very pretty. I love the way ornamental cabbages and kales look in the winter or in the fall containers with some pumpkins. So I have those little white pumpkins to go with. And I also have some Jack B. Little seeds that I might throw in with the white ones. And then I can maybe do something for fall in the containers, like, the cabbages and the mums and that sort of thing. And so I have the cabbage, and then I also have ornamental kale, the crane pink hybrid. So those are vegetables, but I'll be growing them for aesthetic. Well, hey there.
Well, hello. Get my face in here. There we go. There's the thumbnail.
Okay, so moving on to herbs that I'm growing this year. The first herb that I'm going to be growing this year is basil. I grow basil for food, and I also grow basil for my bouquets as filler flowers or greenery for a bouquet. So I grow a few different varieties. I don't have the Genovese basil here because I'm out. I will be purchasing that soon. That is basically what I grow for food. I also grow the red Reuben, which is really pretty and also tastes very good. All herbs you can grow in containers of any shape and size, and you can use them as decorative plants as well as using them for cut. Oftentimes I'll throw herbs into the containers on my porch. So I have a little cutting garden out there, or I also grow them in the green stock, and I grow them in my raised beds all around my tomatoes. The base of the tomato, I always grow basil. They're supposedly a really great companion plant for tomatoes. I don't know if they improve the flavor of the tomato, but they certainly makes it easier to grab a tomato and cut a little basil for a fresh tomato and basil. The next variety is cinnamon basil. I absolutely love this for my bouquets. It not only adds that pretty filler leaf and flower head, it also smells amazing. It smells like cinnamon, and it makes your bouquets that much more pleasurable. The Thai sweet is also fantastic for its scent in a bouquet as well as eating. Very yummy. A new basil that I'm growing this year is the Tulsi or holy basil. I have to say that Jess from Roots and Refuge has influenced me greatly in purchasing this seed. She raves about this year after year, and so I'm going to grow it, and I'm definitely going to grow this in container because it looks like it spreads pretty easy. Of course, she has a much warmer climate than I do, so it might not be something that spreads quite as easy where I am. The next thing that I'm going to be growing this year is dill. So I grow dill every year. This is the mammoth, and this is the bouquet. You can see these are well-loved packets. Dill reseeds very easily, and I do let the volunteers from dill grow, but I also add new seeds. I usually do 2 plantings of dill a year, so I'll start some in the house, and then I will start another batch more towards the middle of the season to keep the dill going. I use it for my own home pickling. It freezes really, really well. You can also, dry the leaves, but I also enjoy using dill in bouquets as filler flowers. It's very pretty and it lasts a long time in a vase. Something new I'm going to be growing this year is lemon balm. I'm going to start this in a container, and then I'm going to leave that container outside and see if I can get it to come back every year. Lemon balm, I believe, is part of the mint family, so it's extremely hardy and extremely invasive. You don't want to plant this anywhere in your regular grow beds or anywhere where you're going to be unhappy when it spreads all around. It can be a bit of a thug. So I'm definitely going to grow this in containers. I'm going to try and find a nice big container that it can make its home in and stay there for hopefully at least, 2 to 3 years to come. And then the last thing that I'm growing this year is parsley. I'm going to grow the Italian giant parsley and also the forest green. Well, I'm not sure what the difference is between the two, but I have both the seeds, so I'm going to go ahead and start them. One, I believe, is curly and one is flat. Yes, okay, that's different. So this one is a curly leaf and this one is a flat leaf. I love parsley. I love to grow tons of it every year and cut it fresh throughout the grow season and then really do a big chop on it and dry it for the rest of the year. And it can grow in the ground, it will get really big if you let it, and actually will come back. It's fairly hardy. And or you can grow it in containers. It grows really fantastic in containers. I'm going to be growing it in the green stock this year. I'm going to do herbs on the crown or the top tier of the green stocks this year, and parsley is definitely going to be one of the herbs that I use for that. Okay, so that's everything I'm growing this year, veg and herbs, and also the different ways that I'm going to be growing it. I hope that you found this useful information. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.